Tony Hamilton, of course, the CEO of Georgina Energy. Tony, good to be speaking. How are you doing, first of all?
Thanks, Mark. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think it was a couple of 3 months ago. I think it was around February that we last spoke, and we were talking about a few things that have been going with the company. But just looking at what's been going on recently here, you've, of course, announced pretty significant news this morning. So just, first of all, give us a bit of your comments on that to start us off.
Yes, I think largely the purpose behind today or yesterday's announcement was the permitting process and project status. So in the case of Hussar, we've lodged our well management plan, our drilling application and our well activity report. But more importantly, we're required to do an environmental impact study because of the enlarged area, which we've done, which we call the EIS2. And on top of that, as a consequence of all of that, we actually were required to complete a report on the archaeological and ethnographic work program for the area, which is very specific for the Indigenous and traditional landowners.
So that's all done.
And also quite pertinent, given Woodside have just received approval for their Northwest Shelf gas project till, I think, 2070.
Okay. So all that work's been done then. So at the moment, could you confirm where Georgina stands with the Hussar drilling approval process? At
present, we've completed everything we were required to do, and that's all been submitted to DEMAs. And again, DEMAs undertake to process every application within 10 to 15 days. They say that on their website. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll grant it in 10 to 15 days. And we're very much in the hands of DEMAs now as to when the permit will be granted. But having said that, my technical team is extremely confident that it will be granted because we've complied with everything we're required to do.
Okay. So you're very much in the hands of DEMA, but we can go on perhaps those previous timelines as perhaps an indicator of what should happen in the next, let's say, couple of weeks or something.
Correct. I mean, our confidence is such that we've identified a Ensign 970 drill rig, which is available, which has a BOP, which stands for blowout preventer of 10,000 PSI. Just an important element, and that rig is available and sitting waiting. So a lot of what we're doing, even from the engineering, has been ongoing in this process. So even though we've lodged all these documents, we're doing all the practical engineering work. Okay. The other key thing we had to do was we actually had to lodge formal notice with the Central Desert Native Title Services to undertake the repairs of the airstrip and the access roads, which we're required to do by law. You can't just go in and repair.
Okay. So that work's been done as well. Okay, that's interesting. Something else I noticed from the recent update was the seismic reprocessing at Hussar had expanded that structural closure and also identified its secondary targets. So this must build on the scoping study that we discussed last time, an NPV of I think around 1.64 billion US. Mm-hmm. So I mean, how does that expanded resource at Hussar and those new targets, can you say how that impacts the economic potential compared to the original scoping study?
Well, it certainly scales it up. And bearing in mind that the scoping study identified in its first format that it was a viable proposition, we're now talking about an extra 50 square kilometres. We're talking about a much more significant seismically defined structure.
Okay.
And we have a secondary target, which is even better.
So on the additional targets as well, Tony, from the update, it said that there was proven drilled occurrences of gas and high concentrations of helium and hydrocarbons. So how do you know that? Has the gas flown to surface?
Well, in fact, the only way you can make that statement, and I think we say drilled occurrences of gas with high concentrations of helium and hydrogen and hydrocarbons, the only way you can make that statement is if the gas flowed to surface and was analysed. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's that's quite good then, I would say, isn't it? That you've got that flown.
Yeah, we've certainly where it's not a case of us going to drill in somewhere where there's a completely unknown commodity or there's a previous well. There's previous drill records, there's previous logs, and that's largely what our model is, re-entry of existing wells.
Yeah, okay.
And that re-entry defines the structure. And ultimately, if other wells are required to be drilled on the structure, we know that the structure already yields gas.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And on Mount Winter, then, you're awaiting ministerial ratification, I think, for one of the areas, the EPA 155. So, I mean, again, timelines on that. What are we thinking here?
Well, again, because we were acquiring it 100%, that's also changed our entire approach to it. So we're accelerating the timeline for re-entry.
Right.
And so as a consequence of that, we're doing all the engineering, which is being supplied, which will form part of the ALRA, which then will allow the minister to grant the permit. The key element of that is that we're moving the entire exploration program forward significantly. And the fact is that we probably wouldn't have been looking to re-enter Mount Winter, at a much later date than what we are now contemplating.
Okay, so that's brought it forward. Okay, well, let's just try and get a sense of what needs to happen then. Can you say any key technical or logical steps to get to that re-entry?
Literally, it's Hussar, rinse and repeat. Exactly what we're doing at Hussar, we'll do at Mount Winter. Okay. Same, right down to the fact that Aztec, our well engineering company, are going to handle both. So they have the advantage of having worked in both locations, having done a significant number of wells previously before their engagement. The other thing that we've done is that we also reprocessed and remapped all the seismic from Mount Winter. And again, like Hussar, we saw, I think, a 15% increase in helium and hydrogen. And although we could only quote in our announcement our 75% entitlement, once we complete that acquisition, that'll increase significantly again for 100% interest.
Okay.
So those numbers, and of course the other benefit is the reprocessed seismic, which was a pretty significant undertaking, showed a second structure and a second target. So again, we're faced with a very similar prospect at Mount Winter as we are at Hussar. The only difference is that it's 100% ours when we complete with Mossman, and that will occur when the minister grants the permit.
Okay, so Hussar first, then you'll look to repeat at Mount Winter. So Hussar,
correct.
The main thing is this, what's in with Demir at the moment, that's got to get secured, and then you could look to get re-entering almost immediately?
Well, then it's a practical process. Then it's a case of mobilising everybody, letting all the contracts, getting the road repaired, getting the airstrip repaired, and then, of course, the drill rig, which will have to come, I think, about 1,800 kilometres to site.
Okay.
All of that can only occur once we've done all the preliminary work, and then we'll fly all the crews in, and then away we go.
Okay.
So the key element to all of that is DEMA's granting the approval to drill.
Okay, well, that's the key point. And are you waiting for that, or are you sort of forward planning and getting some of the longer lead items, or those conversations going, almost ready to push the button, if you like, once you get that?
A lot of the conversations are in hand, but until we get the permit, we can't action anything.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So the prep is underway, and you can action as soon as that comes in. Okay. Correct. So I mean, in terms of I'm just trying to get a sense, just for shareholders who I've seen comments that they perhaps frustration at lack of updates or clear timelines. And I know it's very difficult to give timelines. I won't hold you to that. But could you perhaps say what the summer looks like, the British summer, let's say, not the Australian one?
Well, it's winter here and it's 26 degrees. We are still having unseasonal storms, but traditionally not within the permit area. I think what everybody needs to understand, which is key, is the approval to drill. We have the permit from memory, 5 years, and then it automatically renews for another 5 years. So it's not a consequence of the resource going anywhere or the asset going anywhere. It's very simply the permit being granted and then actioning all the attendant engineering and mobilising all the crews and people. Timeline-wise, I can't second guess DEMAs. They will go through their process in due course.
Okay, well, I just want to finish off just on something we spoke about last time. I think you were in London last time we spoke. You were having discussions with potential off-takers. So is there any update you can share on securing any agreements here?
I think, as we said, negotiations are progressing. That's the first thing.
Okay.
We have completed a detailed review of the advanced prospects. They are proven drilled occurrences with gas that have high concentrations of helium, hydrogen, and hydrocarbons.
Okay.
They're covered under confidentiality agreements, so I can't say much more than that.
Okay.
But these are post-Hussar and Mount Winter targets,
right?
And they fit very much within our re-entry model. Our whole modus operandi is re-entry of existing wells that were drilled, that flowed, and provided the underlying basis for which re-entry could be contemplated.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much for your time. Tony Hamilton, the CEO of Georgina Energy.
Thank you very much, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.